So now I want to look at inverse functions. What's an inverse function? An inverse function reverses the original function. In other words, if a function maps A to B, the inverse function will do the reverse and map back B to A. Good? For example, let's say we have a function f of x equal to 2x plus 5. And you're asked to find the inverse. Now, one way of finding the inverse, we're going to look at a couple of ways. One way of finding the inverse is to examine all the operations that were done on the x. Look at the x, focus on the x. What are the operations done on the x? Let me just put them down here. The x was multiplied by 2. And then 5 was added. Alright, so the x was multiplied by 2 and then 5 was added. Now, the inverse, we're going to do the exact opposite. This was what was done in the original function. The inverse function, we're going to be doing the exact opposite in reverse order. So notice, the last thing that was done here was adding 5. We'll do the opposite of that, which is minus 5. And then, the first thing that was done was multiply by 2. We'll do the opposite of that last, which is dividing by 2. So the inverse function, in the inverse function, again, first thing I put down is the x, and write down these operations. Subtract 5, and divide by 2. So, this means that the original function, if you plug, say, 1 into the original function, if you plug 1 into the original function, what you'll have is 2 times 1, which is 2 plus 5, 7. The inverse, do the exact opposite. In the inverse, if you plug 7, what you'll have in the inverse, if you plug 7, you'll have, for the x, you'll have 7 minus 5, which is 2. 2 divided by 2, which is 1. So the original function, you put the input of 1, give you an output of 7. In the original, the inverse function does the opposite. The input of 7 give you an output of 1. Let's look at another function that we want to find the inverse for. So we have f of x is 3x minus 4 over 2. So let's examine all the operations that were done on the x. So in the original function, what was done to the x? Multiplied by 3, right? Then 4 was subtracted. And then we divided by 2. In the inverse now, we're going to do the exact opposite of these operations. In the reverse order, that is, so the last thing that was done, divide by 2. So now we multiply by 2. Then plus 4. Then divide by 3. Alright, so in the inverse function, again, the first thing you do is put down your x and write down all these operations. So multiply by 2, add 4, and divide the result by 3. Should be divided by 3, right? Opposite to multiplying by 3. Divide the result by 3. So these do the exact opposite. Alright? In other words, if I ask you to find f of, say, 6, for example, f of 6 would be 3 times 6, which is what? What's 3 times 6? 18. 18 minus 4, that's 14. 14 divided by 2, that's 7. So this original function maps 6 to 7. The inverse will do the exact opposite. Map 7 to 6. So the inverse function, if I plug 7 into the inverse, f inverse 7, meaning I replace x here with 7, this will be 2 times 7, which is what? 14. 14 plus 4, that's 18. 18 divided by 3, that's 6. So this function maps 7 to 6. So that's what we mean here when we say if the original function, if a function maps A to B, then the inverse function will do the reverse and map B to A. So you switch it. Alright? So original map 6 to 7. Inverse, cancel this your A, right? Cancel this your B. And then maps back B to A. So A is like the 6, B is like the 7, right? So it does the exact opposite. Let's use another method to find the inverse of f of x. And we'll be using this method going forward. Right? So f of x equals, same example we just looked at, 3x minus 4 over 2. So steps, we can let y be equal to whatever the function is. In this case, it's 3x minus 4 over 2. And then interchange x and y. Interchange x and y. So meaning wherever we have a y, we replace that y with x. And wherever we have a x, we replace that x with y. So interchange x and y. Good? So y is x and now x is y. That's what the inverse does. Alright. Switch the pairs. So now we're going to solve for y. After we interchange, we solve for y, meaning you want to make y the subject. And to get y to be the subject, we need to get rid of this denominator. Right? So we can times, remember we have a denominator of 2. So we can times both sides by a denominator. So times both sides by the denominator, which is 2. So 2 times x, that's 2x. And 2 times this, then 2 into 2 cancel, leaving you with just 2 into 2 is 1, right? Leaving you with just 3y minus 4. Now then we solve for y. We can group the 4 over here, so we'll have 2x plus 4 equal to 3y. Or if you want to say add 4 to both sides. So you want the y by itself, right? So you need to divide both sides by 3. Alright, so 3 cancels 3. So therefore, if inverse x is whatever you have for y, and what do we have for y now? 2x plus 4 over 3. Let's do another one. Alright, here we have another problem. Given that h of x is 2x plus 7 over 5, find h inverse x and h inverse 9. So, let y be equal to 2x plus 7 over 5. So let y be equal to whatever the function is. Interchange x and y. Meaning, where you have y, you put x. And where you have x, you put y. And of course, you want to get rid of the denominator. 5 there, so you times both sides by 5. So 5 times the left, and 5 times the right. So times both sides by 5. Now 5 times x, that's 5x. And 5 into 5, 1. And so you're left with 2y plus 5. Remember the aim of the game here now is to solve for y. You want the y by itself. So let's transpose. You can subtract 5 from both sides, or you should group the 5 over the left. So that's 5x minus 5 equal to 2y, right? And then you want to cancel this 2 here, so you divide both sides by 2. Alright? So 2 into 2, that's 1. So 1y. And then 5x minus 5 over 2. And of course, whatever you have for y, then that is your inverse function. So therefore, h inverse x is equal to 5x minus 5 over 2. 5x minus 5 over 2. So that's part A. Part B now was to find h inverse 9. So here's h inverse. So h inverse 9 means to replace the x value with 9. So 5x becomes 5 times 9. And then you have a minus 5 over 2. Right? 9 times 5 is 45. 45 minus 5. So it's 45 minus 5 over 2. 45 minus 5 is 50. 50 divided by 2, that's 25. So the solution for part B is 25.